Hello everyone. So I haven't done a video in quite some time. There's been a pandemic happening from the coronavirus or COVID-19. So around like mid-March, the economy basically just grinded to a halt. The employer that I worked for laid off its workers. I mean, like temporarily, so at least. But basically everywhere that's non-essential, like groceries or pharmacies, basically just like food places are open and it's drive-through only. So, like, the entire economy is basically on hold until at least April 30th, I guess. They're trying to basically put things back to normal in May, so we'll see what happens with that. Um, and the virus itself is, I'm not a medical expert. I really don't know a lot about the virus itself, but what I do know is that it's very contagious, is particularly the problem. The death rate, I mean, you'll look at the death rate and it seems like it's low, like it's like Fauci said it's probably around 1%, but I mean that's basically 10 times as deadly as the seasonal flu, so it is a big deal. So you'll see a lot of people try to minimize how bad the health aspects of it are, or perhaps like just the hysteria in general. Um, and so a lot of people and Fauci is saying that that like the social distancing is working. Like we don't have like very strict rules about it. It's like you can still basically go out now. It's not like there's martial law or anything like that. But the social distancing does seem to be mitigating the problem. And and I mean we're leading the world right now. I don't think that's changed in terms of cases, coronavirus cases. Which is, I mean, you should look at that alone as a failure in my view, because China, I mean, their population density, like they're more like on the eastern side of the country as far as I know. I like, meaning like most of the country I don't think is inhabited. Like there's probably a lot of just empty land there. But so the population density is probably a big issue. But if we have more cases than China, and China has like a population of like 1 billion people, we have a population of around 350 million. Like I think it goes to show just how bad like we're handling this. Like we're not prepared, and there's reports going back to September that they knew this was coming. Um, and Trump, and I don't want to just blame Trump, but Trump and his administration at large were clearly not prepared and not doing anything to because I mean, like, we're having conversations about like shortages of masks and ventilators. So like like we should have been on top of this months ago, and even now it's like it shouldn't be an issue. I'll get into that later. Like we need a centralized effort here, and we can get it done. Like there's just constant. What I'm trying to say is basically like we can get stuff done when they want it done. We can do endless war. We can do corporate bailouts in the tune of billions, maybe even trillions of dollars. And that's what this stimulus bill had in it. But even the tax bill back in 2017, like we can get the money to people when we want it to, and so we should be able to translate that into supplies, emergency supplies. And so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but people knew it was coming. There was insider trading between members of Congress. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, that's just a coincidence, like probably people that are like more neoliberal on the free market side. And I mean, you've got to be naive. Come on, the people basically they're selling their stocks right before it tanked. Um, like there's clearly things in the government, like conversations that are happening that we aren't aware of, and I mean that should be obvious. But the thing is, for them, it's not about trying to minimize the harm. It's like they hear that this stuff is happening, right? It's about to unfold, and what they come away with is my self-interest. I have to protect that. So this is a problem with corruption, and it comes from both sides, I'm sure. This particular guy, I think his name was Richard, or I think it was Richard Burr, congressman, who I think he has an ethics investigation going on. I don't know if that is still happening, but basically, the economy is at Great Depression levels. Like, I think we're already worse than the Great Recession in 2008. The impacts of this are going to extend months for the economy, and I think unnecessarily so, because basically what we have to basically the choice that we're forced to make is there's these big companies that we rely on, like airlines are a great example. And so like we have to keep these companies going, so we have to bail them out and give them billions of dollars. Well, I think basically it's like I would be maybe okay with that, but the problem is there's going to be no strings attached. It's like these companies just get to do whatever they want and get the taxpayer money anyways. So I would look, in the coming months, look at workers that are laid off and look at if those companies received taxpayer money, because it should be it's completely unfair for them to get the taxpayer money and then they are like, oh, we have to lay off our workers, otherwise you're going to go bankrupt. Well, how about your corporate CEOs don't get the bonuses? How about like maybe the guy at the very very top like forgoes his salary? Like I saw, like this was kind of an anecdotal example, but like Texas Roadhouse of all places, the CEO like forgoed his salary. So like that's why I say it's like anecdotal, because like that's not the norm. Like this is normally like the people at the top are fine, and then the average workers get laid off, and then we're screwed. So basically, we're looking at a situation where, I think, thousands, if not millions, of workers are going to be laid off probably like closer to the fall, and then the question becomes like whether or not these companies can even sustain anyways. It's like we pumped in like $2 trillion into the stock market and it did nothing. So we're just throwing money, down the toilet. Because at the end of the day, like I think this is an antiquated economy. We can't continue with this system anymore. And so what that means is we have to reorient our priorities. And that requires leadership, that requires twisting arms, really. And actually, I mean, you could almost say spitting in certain people's faces, like because it's not going to be beneficial to corporations. Like there's companies, private companies making the ventilator masks now, and they can make a profit off of that. I don't know if I would say, if I was president, like I don't know if I would say like you can't make any profit off of it, but I think there should be better controls on this. It's all about like. I feel like one problem just feeds into the other, it seems like. It's like Trump really just likes to like put a spotlight on private industry and be like, oh, look at what they're doing, so great. And it's like, this guy's a great supporter of me, the My Pillow guy. But like it's like you focus your attention on this, and then you go on and do your press conference, and you're like listing off numbers of stuff. Like it's like, I sent 60,000 masks today. I sent 100,000 ventilators to this place. So like that's like the bare minimum. Like just basically stating stuff that you did, and like who is to say that these numbers that you're putting out there, it's like, who's to say that that is what's actually needed? Maybe there's a lot more that needs to be sent to these places that you're talking about. It's just there's no context given, and people eat it up because it's reality TV, basically. Um, so they aren't providing enough leadership. Make sure the supplies get to everyone. I mean, states are forced to bid on these supplies, and Trump is like basically claiming that he can't step in and do things his way. I mean, that's ultimately ironic, because it's like, I don't even know, like, if Trump was basically running the whole show, the Democrats still wouldn't like it because he's like incompetent and it would screw it up somehow. But basically, that is what they're asking for. They're asking for a more centralized system, which is what you should have. Um, I would say basically, if Trump took more control, like hopefully you would get more supplies to people. Like whatever will get the most supplies to people is what I'm in favor of. Um, and what that would be is basically a strong leadership position in the administration, like the president, like and delegating how you do this the most efficient way, the way that will help the most people, so on and so forth. I mean, like, when you get down to the nitty gritty, like, that's when the professionals come in. Like, I'm not an expert on these things, but basically, like, states are saying, like, they're forced to bid on these things because other companies, that they're selling it at a profit, like I'm saying. So um, Trump claims he can't because there's a thing called the Constitution. So he's basically trying to, like, pass the buck to the states. He doesn't want to take the blame for this. And to be clear, Andrew Cuomo in New York is not doing a good job. He's not expanding benefits to people. And I mean, he's basically, he thinks, I guess, he's just the better leader. So he's like, he'd rather be in control than Trump. But we need a system that is more centralized, like I'm saying. So and when I get to Jared Kushner's like national stockpile comments, this kind of applies, because he was basically like, it's so ridiculous what he was saying. I mean, it's really kind of mind-boggling. He was like, and the stockpile is referring to, it's like supplies. I mean, like all the medical supplies, like ventilators and things that the federal government owns. And he's like, it's like the national stockpile. The notion was that it's like our stockpile and not the states. So, and when he's asked about that, like when Trump was asked what he meant, he's like, it's an unfair question. It was the federal government. It's the federal government's masks or whatever. Like, okay, walk yourself through this here. In the middle of a pandemic, what is the justification for the federal government telling states, telling governors that they can't have these medical supplies right now? Like, basically, like Trump was saying, like, I don't even think that New York needs all these ventilators, like 30,000 more ventilators, or, and I mean, like, he did say it. They try to act like he didn't, but like the video is there. So, like, what the claim is, I don't know, like, where it came from first, Fox News or Trump, but like, people are saying that, like, hospitals are just selling the equipment out the back door, basically. And I'm assuming that that means like they think the supplies aren't being used, so like they're trying to get more than they need. But okay, they're saying that without any evidence that I can see. It's like we're in the middle of a pandemic here, and tens and thousands of people are dying. Like New York City is the epicenter of this crisis for us right now. It may be even the epicenter for the whole world right now. I don't know. But there's no justification for not giving the states, not giving the governors, not giving the hospitals, whoever you want to say. There's no justification for Trump, the administration, the federal government not giving them what they want. In the middle of a crisis, it's ridiculous. I just don't know what to say. And it's because I think, it's ironic because like Trump, or just right wingers in general who support Trump, like it's like that's the takeaway is like the hospitals are selling the stuff out the back door. This is a very Trumpian like scheme and scam, and like the people around him, around Trump, like that's exactly what's going on. I mean, in a sense, like they're profiting off this pandemic. And so when in terms of the stimulus bill, there's the good and the bad, I would say. Like we were able to get a payment of $1,200 to each adult. I think it's $500 for each child, and it's a one-time payment. And like that's not enough. It's good to have to get money from the government. I understand, like it's better than nothing, certainly. But people are freaking celebrating about getting crumbs when what's happening with the like corporate bailouts in the stimulus bill. So you get the bailout money. And by the way, like Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, like it's at his discretion who is getting this money. And call me crazy for not trusting him. The freaking Goldman Sachs guy, who was foreclosing like grandmas and grandpas, for like not paying like a few cents on their mortgage or something. And you look up the stories. Go ahead. And like he's just a goon. He is a corporate goon, and not good. So I don't trust him in terms of how you divvy out that money. And then they've said that they're not going to listen to the oversight rules, meaning like any conflicts of interest that come about. I mean, like you're friends with Steve Mnuchin, you're friends with Trump, whatever. Like it's you get the best deal. But beyond that, I think there's rules that like if you get, I don't even know if you need the bailout money, but I'd have to look more into it. But basically, after like 6 months, you're allowed to lay off like 10 like up to 10% of your workforce, I believe. So again, like if you're getting the federal bailout money, I think there should be strings attached that say you don't lay off any of your workers if you're getting taxpayer money. But like even with these rules that they have, like after 6 months they can lay off a certain amount. Like who's to say that they're even going to listen to that? I don't trust these people, with anything. So it's just very depressing for everyone. Just to conclude the coronavirus part, like it's very depressing for everyone. People have lost hope. And it's like, I'm going to talk about the Biden-Bernie primary, and it's like people have forgotten that that's even happening because in the middle of this, crisis, it's kind of hard to focus on an election, especially when the news, like that's what they talk about. They talk about the coronavirus. They aren't really talking about the election. So, just to get to Biden and Bernie a little bit, the Wisconsin primaries today. Now, Bernie called for postponing the primary. Biden did not. the Wisconsin party, the Wisconsin Democratic Party did not. The governor was trying to stop it. Actually, he was trying to postpone it till I think June 9th. And then it went to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and then it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, decided to let the primary continue. They cut polling places like by more than half. This is, like Banana Republic territory, honestly. We're having an illegitimate primary today. It's disgusting. Because it's like if there was more people maybe on Bernie's side, like if Joe Biden had come out and said we should postpone the primary, I would have been a little bit hopeful that there's at least some voices out there, like the two candidates running for president on the Democratic side, at least they'd be on the same page when it comes to that. When it comes to voting in the middle of a pandemic, where people can get killed or sick, like I would think that should be a given, but no, only Bernie is on the right side of that issue. So it's happening today, and they cut the polling locations in half, like I'm saying, like more than that probably. So it's just like the turnout is not going to be a fair reading. It's like you're cutting down the turnout by that much. It's just, this is so basic. I shouldn't have to explain this. Like, you're forcing people in a situation where they have to go out to vote, and they're not really supposed to be going out in public. So it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how we could be at this point. In terms of how they're handling the pandemic themselves, like Bernie has been fundraising. He's been doing everything like in his power to try and address the coronavirus pandemic. He's asked all the time, like, are you going to drop out? Are you going to drop out? Are you going to drop out? And he keeps saying he's like reassessing his campaign. Like, I think he's going to stay in longer. I don't see him dropping out. I don't think he will this month. I could be wrong, but we'll see. I don't think he'll drop out this month. I think he's going to probably wait till June, like early June. But I think he will eventually drop out. I mean, just the primary is not at the forefront right now. And I would hope that he gains momentum. I want Bernie to win. But I think it's very hard in this environment when you can't canvass, you can't go door to door, you can phone bank. That's like basically the only thing you can do. But overall, you know what? I would say Bernie screwed up a little bit. Post Super Tuesday, he should have just he should have really started amping up the anti-Biden attacks, and he needs to stop being so nice. He is way too nice, and I respect that about him to some degree. Like, he's so honest and just he's got to be. It's not even about being honest, because here's the thing. I've talked about this before, I know, but like, he refused to call Biden corrupt. It was actually the case that campaign surrogate of his, David Sirota, who's also a journalist, was sending out, I think, a mass email of the Zephyr Teachout Guardian article that was outlining in pretty good detail how Biden is corrupt. And then Bernie banned Sirota from being a surrogate for the campaign. So he was not willing to go after Biden. He was, kid gloves on. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Is like he was not taking that threat seriously, or maybe he was, but just didn't want to go after him because he likes Joe Biden personally or something. Like he just needed to do whatever was necessary in order to bring him down. Um, and I liked the attacks he was doing, like basically like attacking him on policy. Bernie is just so laser focused on policy, but he didn't make the political points enough. I think he wasn't. He should have said two things, and I agree with Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk on this. He made these 2 points first. Um, he was saying one that Bernie should compare Biden to Hillary and say, like, we've ran this experiment, like this is the Washington Insider, the centrist, they're supposedly more electable. We've run this experiment, and it didn't work. And then the second thing is Bernie should claim the label of moderate. And I think, it's like he shouldn't drop democratic socialism or whatever. Like, I think what he needs to do is basically explain that this is becoming what is moderate. I mean, it perhaps was moderate for a long time. The fact that we have a history of democratic socialism in this country. But he should have been saying, like, yeah, like, I'm the moderate because the rest of the country is very much, for my agenda. Even when they're not claiming to be liberal or leftist, like, a lot of people are for Medicare for all, even Republicans. So he should have embraced the fact that his positions are well liked, and that makes him kind of a moderate in terms of the American people. But I think it's just too little, too late now. Unfortunately, he needed a better strategy after Super Tuesday, and Biden became just too formidable now. And so just to leave it with this, like, I really hope Bernie can make it. I find it very unlikely that he gets the nomination at this point, because it's just like the primaries that are coming up, like, he was not necessarily in a great position to win those anyways, and a lot of them, I guess, are postponed now. So the postponements do help Bernie, but also, like, Biden doesn't want to debate. he's just backing out of a debate with Bernie, and he's like, I think people have heard enough debates. What does that say about Joe Biden? That he can't even go on stage with Bernie and have a debate, or he doesn't want to. I mean, that's ridiculous. They keep him in the shadows and let him speak for just a little bit at a time. He did a like 27-minute town hall with his wife, Joe Biden, and Joe didn't speak until like the 2.5 minute mark, and he even joked about it. He's like, "It's like, am I allowed to say something now?" Like, we all know what's going on here. This is a means to an end for a lot of people. A lot of people just don't like Trump, and they think Biden can beat Trump. That's all it is to people. It's really not that complicated, and it's pathetic. It really is. Like that people are falling for the same thing twice. They don't realize that they're so vacuous, and that shows. It's like people see that all they want is just this particular result, like they want Trump out, and people see that they're not actually fighting for anything. Bernie's the only one who's actually fighting for things, and so I think he's the one that should come away with the nomination, although it's unlikely. I think we got to do whatever we can to get him across the finish line.